Hi, I'm Teresa and welcome to my channel. I'm coming to you from a bit of a different location. So this is the living room of my flat. You'll see a flat tour in an upcoming vlog at some point. But here we are. This is not my bookshelf if you're new to my channel. My bookshelf is very different to this, so don't judge me by the books here, okay? But yes, I just wanted to come on here and wrap up the books that I have read in January and February. I didn't do a dedicated wrap up for January because, as you'll see, there wasn't much to talk about, and also because I moved right at the end of January to Spain, so I was a bit busy, you know? So I decided I'd just do a all-in-one, two-in-one January and February wrap up. So let's just get started on all the books that I have read this year. So to start off the year, I read The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is an adult, kind of contemporary fantasy, bit of a magical book, and it has been on my TBR for years, but for some reason I've always associated it with New Year's, so I couldn't bear to pick up at another time of year. So when this New Year came around, I just knew I had to finally read it, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was a great way to start off the year. So this follows Zachary, who's a student in university, and one day he goes to the library and he picks out a book and he starts reading it, and he discovers that the book is about him. One of the stories in this book is about him and this moment that he's never told anyone about before. And so this sets him on this journey of trying to figure out the origins of this book, who wrote it, you know, if the other stories have any truth to them. And you get involved in secret societies, this magical underground library, and really it's just a book about stories and the effect that they can have on you, the kind of purpose in writing them and metaphors and everything. Definitely it's a book lover's book. It's so wonderful. Zachary is gay and you do have a bit of a relationship there, so we love to see some queer rep. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book. It definitely at times felt too smart for me. I was just trying so hard to keep up with what is happening, what's real and what's not. How do all these stories you get kind of interspersed with Zachary's story, how do they play into the main story? And oh, it was all right. It was a wild ride, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. My kind of reason for giving it 4 over 5 stars was because I didn't like how it ended. I felt like it was a bit rushed, you know, the rest of the story was done with such care, you know, a bit of a slow burn kind of story, but the ending was just quite rushed to me. I didn't really like how things resolved and the kind of lack of resolution, if you will, so that's why I gave it 4 stars, but it was still a very good book. So the next 3 books I'm going to talk about as one because they're all part of the same series. So last year I reread A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, intending on rereading the entire series before the new ACOTAR book came out, but I just never got around to it. So since I've now bought that new book on Kindle and I will be reading it soon, I thought it was time to just finish my reread of the series. So I reread A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Winds and Ruin, and A Court of Frost and Starlight. And I had previously given these books 5 stars. They were my favourite books. I adored them. They were just my, favourite books of all time. And yeah, I decided I was going to reread these series, see if I still loved it as much, but also prepare for the new book. And I'm pleased to say I still really enjoyed these books. They're definitely not, my favourites anymore, but they still held up. I still very much enjoyed them. And in fact, I actually enjoyed A Court of Frost and Starlight more than I did previously. I'd only given it 3 stars before. I'd been quite disappointed. But this time, I quite enjoyed it. I appreciated more the character work that Sarah J Maas does in this book and the kind of setting up for the sequel series. So I felt like I could appreciate that more by reading more critically of the work she was doing, rather than before when I'd read them. I was very much just based on my personal enjoyment, which obviously involved a lot of romance, a lot of action, and that book didn't always have that. But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed rereading this series and I'm very excited to pick up A Court of Silver Flames sometime soon. I keep seeing fan art for it in the Valkyries, which has me very excited. And yes, if you don't know what A Court of Thorns and Roses is about, where have you been? It follows a young woman called Feyre, and she is hunting to feed her family, and one day she kills a wolf in the woods, and this wolf turns out to be a fairy. And so when the High Lord of this fairy's court comes to take her because she's broken some magical rules she didn't know about, she has to live in his court as her punishment, and things devolve from there. And it's very much a romance-based fantasy novel, which I love. I love romance in fantasy more than just like the actual fantasy plot. You know, it's the romance that gets me through, the romance that I enjoy the most. So next up, I read Royals by Rachel Hawkins. I actually read this for a vlog, so I'm gonna keep this kind of brief so we can maintain the mystery there. But basically this is a YA romance, and you follow an American girl whose older sister becomes engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. Now obviously Scotland doesn't have a royal family, and you'll see my kind of thoughts on the depiction of Scotland in the vlog. That's kind of my point in recording the vlog and sharing my thoughts on it. But you then follow our main character as she falls in with some of the boys she meets in Scotland, and there's a romance there. And yeah, so I was given this book because I mentioned to my friend that I'd read some reviews on it. It sounded like it just did not depict Scotland very well at all, and I wanted to read it just for a bit of a laugh, and so she got it for me, and now here we are. I finally read it. I got this before I started my YouTube channel because I was like, what if I started a channel and I did this video? And now it's finally happening, so it feels a bit like a full circle moment. But yes, this vlog will also include me reading the kind of spin-off book to this, which is Sapphic. It's a Sapphic boarding school, enemies to lovers romance, so I'm excited for that. And I feel like with reading Royals first, I've gotten all of my anger at how Scotland is depicted kind of out of the way, and maybe I can just enjoy the romance in this next one. We shall see. But yes, overall it wasn't that bad. Definitely needed more research on Scotland, definitely not accurate, but the writing itself, characters, they weren't bad. But yes, you can find out the rest in that vlog whenever I upload it. And then next up, I'm going to talk about one of my January reads and one of my February reads, because they're both in the same series, and that is the Crescent City series, also by Sarah J Maas. I was on a Sarah J Maas kick these first couple months of the year, okay, but I've only got one book left to catch up on, so you'll see less of her after that. But yes, this is House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath, which just released in February. It released right before I had to go home for a week due to visa problems, so it was like the perfect time for me to just read it in that week when I was home, since I was getting a hardcover copy to match the first book. And yes, I really enjoyed this book. I love urban fantasy as like a setting, and this book did it so well. I loved all of the lore of the world and learning about all the different creatures we've got and the kind of politics of that. I thought it was done so well. I really enjoyed it. And I also just loved, as I always do in Sarah J Maas's books, the characters, their relationships, not always just romance but friendship as well. I just had a really great time with this series. The ending of the second book left me audibly gasping because stuff went down, and I just really enjoyed it. So this book follows Bryce Quinlan, and she lives in Crescent City. She's a complete party girl, and she's very happy with her life as it is at the moment, but when tragedy strikes, her life falls apart. And you follow her a few months afterwards when these attacks that ruined her life previously continue, and she has to work together with a man called Hunt, a fallen angel, to, you know, figure out what's going on. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the series. They're long books, they probably don't need to be as long as they are, that'd be my main criticism, but you know, the characters, the setting, the world, the plot, all of it, I really enjoyed. And now onto my February reads. The first book I read was If This Gets Out by Sophie Gonzalez and Cale Dietrich. This book has been on my TBR for ages. I got an arc of it, which is what I read, but I just never got around to reading it since I hit that reading slump at the end of last year. But I've now finally read it, and I really enjoyed it. So this follows two members of this really world famous boy band called Saturday as they embark on their European tour. And you follow Ruben, who is gay and being forced to be closeted by the industry, and he's really feeling the pressure of this. And when he kind of confides in this and his relationship with one of his bandmates, that goes closer, you follow them falling in love and then having to deal with the realities of their situation, you know, being forced in the closet, how it would look for them to be gay, you know, how that would affect the band and everything. And I just really enjoyed this story. I thought it was written so well. It's co-written and each author wrote one perspective, and they just worked so well together. It didn't feel like two authors had written it. It was so cohesive, but then it allowed for different voices for each of the narrators, which I really enjoyed. And yes, I just loved these characters. I'd been kind of craving a boy band story since I read I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman, because that book you had one character in the fandom, one character in the boy band, each narrating, and I got like a hint of the boy band vibes and I was dying for it, so this is why I finally picked up If This Gets Out. And it did not disappoint. Again, it also dealt with mental health, fandom, all of those things that these boys would have had to deal with. I thought it was really good. It didn't pull any punches when discussing the industry as well, which I like to see, and yeah, it was just a really damn good book. I thoroughly enjoyed my time reading it. Next up, I read Jade Fire Gold by June C. L. Tan. I've had this one on my TBR for a while, and I got an ARC last year, but I never got around to reading it. But I finally picked it up. It had been really calling my name, and I talked about it in my Books I Want to Read in Spain video, which I'll link down below if you haven't checked it out yet. And it just, talking about it there, I was just like, I really want to read this. So I finally picked it up, and unfortunately I was quite disappointed by it. I gave it 2 stars. It just didn't give what it was supposed to give. In my opinion at least. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I hoped I would. So this follows a dual perspective again. You've got Anne, who lives in the desert. She's really no one, she's nothing. And you have got Alton, who is the lost heir, and he's really trying to regain his throne. And when their paths cross, they begin kind of working together a bit, but also Anne is revealed to have incredible power. And yeah, so this book, what really sold me about reading this book was that this main pairing between our 2 main characters was meant to have Zutara vibes, like Zuko and Katara from Avatar The Last Airbender. And I loved Avatar The Last Airbender when I watched it last summer, I think, or the summer before, I can't remember. I really loved it, and I really wanted Katara and Zuko to get together. I just thought that their relationship would work so well. I was really disappointed with who Katara ended up with, so I thought this would be a bit like a fix-it. But I did not like their relationship. I thought it had no chemistry at all, and that was really because their characters were not fleshed out. They weren't believable to me. They felt like they were going through the motions, and it just really put a downer on the book, as well as I felt that plot was quite basic, you know, Lost Prince trying to reclaim his throne. Like, we've seen that a million times. A girl with magical powers that she's been keeping secret is found out and taken to the palace. We've seen that a million times. But what I wanted was for the author to do something new with this, something to make it leave an impression, and they just didn't. And then the characters weren't noteworthy either, so there's really nothing to keep my interest, to really like pull it together for me. So I ended up giving it 2 stars. Unfortunately, it was okay to read, but nothing really stuck with me about the book, unfortunately. And the final book I'm going to talk about is The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. This was another one I read as an ARC. It is also now out. All of these books I've read so far have already been released, so you can pick them up now. So The Bone Spindle is a gender-bent Sleeping Beauty retelling meets Indiana Jones, and I just think that pitch alone makes it sound incredible. That's what really made me want to read it, and it did not disappoint. So you follow 2 narrators. You have got Fee and you've got Shane. So Fee is kind of nomadic almost. She's a treasure hunter, she works alone, she's always moving to somewhere different. And when Shane comes to her saying, I have this map, I need your help, the 2 girls begin to work together. And Shane is an axe-wielding lesbian, so like, I'm in love. She's like fiery and impulsive and everything. I really enjoyed her character, and she's also a treasure hunter. And so the 2 begin to work together on this quest. And when they discover the bone spindle that Sleeping Beauty, Briar Rose, pricked his finger on, And Fee then pricks her finger as well. She is irrevocably bound with him, and it is her destiny then to break the curse on Sleeping Beauty and on the kingdom of Andar. And so we follow our two girls working together to try and complete this quest. It's a lot of fun. It really did feel like a classic action movie, like Indiana Jones style. You know, it was fast paced, it kept me on my toes, lots of danger, lots of discoveries, and I just really enjoyed it. I loved Shane and Fee's dynamic. Shane, as I've said, is very impulsive and brash, but Fee's the complete opposite. She's very studious. She goes to these ruins, not looking for treasure like Shane, but to discover the books and the history and understand this lost kingdom of Andar. And the two of them just working together and becoming friends and everything, I just love to read it. And yes, that has been the books I've read in the first 2 months of 2022. I had my first 5-star read since July in Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. I also gave the sequel 5 stars as well. I just had to, you know, I just so thoroughly enjoyed them. So as always, you can find links to all of these books on Goodreads down below, as well as my reviews where I have them. So for all of these arcs I've mentioned, they will be there. And you can also find my social media if you want to keep up with me elsewhere. I've been posting a lot on Instagram and TikTok recently, and I'm always active on Twitter. It's an addiction, it's a problem, but you can find me there as well. And yes, just thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in another video soon.